Hello, and welcome back to Haunted Drift Horror. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy drifting into haunted realms filled with pure horror, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story 1, I recently moved to New York City, and for a while, I really loved it. I loved the noise, the movement, the feeling that the city never fully stopped breathing. Even late at night, when other places went quiet and dark, New York kept talking to itself. Cars hissed through wet streets. People argued outside bodegas. Trains screamed underground. Steam rose from vents like the city had something burning beneath it. When you finally did sleep, the place followed you into your dreams. You dreamed of crowded sidewalks, glowing windows, strangers laughing, strangers crying, and 1,000 conversations mixing together until they became one long voice. There were things I hated too, of course. The smells could hit you before you even turned a corner. Hot food, garbage, perfume, wet concrete, cigarettes, and sometimes something so rotten it made your stomach twist. Times Square was worse than I expected. Everyone talks about it like it is some glowing center of the world, but to me it felt like a nightmare, pretending to be a tourist spot. The lights were too bright. The screens were too big. The people moved like a crowd in a panic, even when nobody was running. And above all of it, the skyscrapers climbed toward the sky like they were trying to touch heaven and charge rent for it. Still, I loved the city. I had moved there for a fresh start. That was what I told people when they asked. It sounded clean and hopeful. The truth was messier. I had left my hometown because my life there had become small and dead. I had a job that paid almost nothing and took everything out of me. I had friends who were more like habits than friends. I had seasonal depression that had stopped being seasonal and had become the weather inside my head all year round. I did not know what I was moving toward when I packed my things and came to New York. I only knew I needed to get away from what I had left behind. Now I was in a city where I felt more at home than I ever had, even though I was also more alone than I had ever been. I got a job as a waitress in NoHo. The restaurant was small but expensive, the kind of place where rich people ordered things they could not pronounce, and men on dates acted like leaving a big tip proved they were good people. The money was not amazing, but it was enough to barely make rent if I watched every dollar and used my credit cards only when I absolutely had to. Most nights were busy enough to make my feet ache all the way up my legs. The customers were usually polite, but New Yorkers have a way of being honest that feels like being slapped with a clean hand. They were not always cruel. They were just direct. And when you are tired, direct can feel cruel. I did not really know my coworkers. That sounds strange, considering how many hours I spent beside them, but restaurant work does that. You move around each other all night, carrying plates, refilling water, handling complaints, splitting tips, and trying not to fall apart. But you rarely talk about anything real. By the end of a shift, everyone is too tired to make friends. Looking back, I wish I had tried harder. None of them seemed unkind. Maybe they thought I was the one who was hard to approach. Maybe I was. I had gotten used to keeping people at a distance. The last time I remember being outside, it was raining hard. I do not know when that was anymore. The clock still reads 3:21 a.m. I have looked at it so many times that the numbers feel burned into my mind. 3:21, 3:21, 3:21. The time does not change. My phone says the same thing. The display above the train doors says the same thing. Every screen, every reflection, every half-working digital clock I have seen since then shows those same numbers. I used to think time was something solid, something you could trust. Now I know it can stop around you like a trap closing. That night, I got out of work late. The restaurant officially closed at 11, but the last table did not leave until 1:32 in the morning. Last call had been at 11, but they had money and no shame. So they stayed, talking loudly over empty dessert plates while the rest of us cleaned around them and pretended not to hate them. By the time they finally stood up, collected their coats, and walked out into the rain, the whole restaurant felt like it had exhaled. But leaving was not as simple as walking out. I still had to divide tips for bussers and cooks, drop my bank, organize my receipts, wipe down my section, and roll silverware for the next shift. My hands moved automatically because I had done it so many times. Fold napkin. Place fork. Place knife. Roll tight. Repeat. The whole time I kept thinking about my apartment in Brooklyn. My bed. My dry clothes. My cheap little lamp beside my mattress. I did not make it out of the restaurant until 2:31 a.m. I hated taking the subway that late. During the day, the subway was crowded and annoying, but it made sense. It belonged to commuters, students, tourists, workers, and people with places to be. After 2 in the morning, it felt different. The platform seemed too empty and too full at the same time. There were fewer people, but the darkness between them felt crowded. The tunnels breathed heat. The lights buzzed. Every sound traveled too far. I always felt like something was moving around me in a layer of the city I could not see. I pulled my hoodie tight around my face to keep some of the rain off and hurried down the stairs into the 14th Street Union Square station. The moment I stepped below the street, the air changed. It was humid and warm, almost thick, and even though it smelled like metal, old water, and something sour, it felt better than the cold rain above. It was like moving one layer closer to hell, and somehow that was more comfortable. There was no one near the turnstiles, so I jumped one. I know, I should not have. But at that hour, soaked and exhausted, the idea of paying $3 to sit in a metal container underground felt insulting. I landed on the other side, glanced around once, and kept walking. I needed the R train first. It was due in 5 minutes. The platform was almost empty. A few homeless men slept under an advertisement, wrapped in blankets and plastic bags. A couple of strangers stood far apart from each other, all of them with earbuds in, heads down, sealed inside their own little worlds. I could not judge them. I was one of those strangers, too. In New York, people can stand 5 feet from each other and be completely alone. Everything seemed normal, except for one man. He stood farther down the platform, dressed completely in black. Black dress pants, black peacoat, black Italian wool fedora, black penny loafers with dark socks. He looked old-fashioned, but not in a costume way. More like he belonged to another time and had stepped into ours by mistake. I could see him only from the side at first. Something about his profile looked wrong, though I could not say how. Maybe too smooth. Maybe too dark. Maybe it was only because I was sleep-deprived and already nervous. No one else reacted to him. People looked in his direction and then looked away like nothing was there. That made me feel foolish for noticing. This was New York. Strange people were part of the background. So I told myself to be normal. Be another bystander. Keep your head down. The train arrived on time. Everyone lifted their eyes from their phones as the doors opened. A few people stepped off, and then we stepped in. It was not crowded, so finding a seat was easy. I chose one under the subway map and near the doors, because I always sat near doors when I could. Nothing had happened to me in the 3 months since I moved there, but that did not mean I trusted the city. There is no such thing as being too safe when you are alone at night. The ride began normally. Nobody spoke. Nobody looked at anyone else. The only sounds were the train moving through the tunnels, the dull rattle of the tracks, and the automated announcement at each stop. I pulled out my phone and tried to distract myself. But at every station I looked up to see if the man in black had gotten off. He never did. New passengers got on. Old passengers got off. No one noticed him. Even when people looked directly toward him, their faces stayed blank, as if he was only another ad on the wall. I started to wonder if I was hallucinating. Maybe the exhaustion had finally broken something in me. Maybe I would not make it to my apartment that night. Maybe I would end up in a hospital, telling some tired doctor that I had seen a man in black on the subway and could not stop staring at him. I tried not to stare. I really did. But something kept pulling my eyes back to him. It felt physical, like a hook behind my pupils. I would look down at my phone, and then, without meaning to, I would be looking at him again. Sometimes I realized I had not blinked in too long. My eyes burned, but I could not close them. It was like I was being forced to watch him. Finally, the dot lit up on the map. 42nd Street, Times Square. Thank God. I needed to transfer to the C train there. I told myself that once I got off, I would be away from him. I would stand on a different platform, take a different train, and whatever strange feeling had taken hold of me would end. When the doors opened, I got up fast and made a straight line out of the car. The time on my phone said 2:58 a.m. The next train was supposed to come in 15 minutes. I hated the wait, but I did not care. Anything was better than staying near that man. More than anything, I was grateful to blink again. It sounds ridiculous, but the feeling of blinking is something you take for granted until something makes you afraid you cannot do it. I found a bathroom and splashed water on my face. The water was cold and smelled faintly of metal. I stared at myself in the mirror above the sink. I looked terrible. Wet hair stuck to my forehead. My eyes were red. My hoodie was dark with rain. I looked like I had not slept in days. But there was nothing behind me. No man in black. No shadow. No strange figure waiting over my shoulder. I whispered to myself that I was fine. I told myself I was tired. I told myself New York late at night could make anyone paranoid. Then I left the bathroom. It was 3:03 a.m. I had 10 minutes to reach the platform for my connecting train. I moved through the station, following signs. Even at that hour, there were still people around, though not many. My eyes kept darting from sign to sign, then face to face. Every time I saw someone wearing black, I made sure they had a face. That became important to me very quickly. A face meant human. A face meant safe. At least, I thought it did. I found the C train platform and stood with my back against the pillar, staring down at my phone. Then the app updated. Delayed, no arrival time. No, 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 I whispered. Fuck. How could it be delayed now? It had been due in 1 minute. 1 minute. I stared at the screen like anger might force the train to appear. Then I heard brakes. A train was stopping at the platform. I looked up, confused. The app still showed no train arriving, but there it was. Maybe the app was wrong. Maybe I had misread it. Maybe it did not matter. I only knew I wanted to get out of that station and get home. The doors opened. I stepped inside. The seats near the doors were taken, so I moved farther down the car. That was when I saw him again. The man in black sat across from the only open seat that looked even slightly comfortable. For a second, I considered getting off. But the doors were still open. People were behind me, and I felt foolish. I told myself again that I was paranoid. He was only a man. Maybe he had transferred too, Maybe he was going to Brooklyn like me. Maybe there was no mystery at all. I sat across from him. At 3:19 a.m., the train started moving. I stared down at my feet, but I kept glancing around from the corners of my eyes. Something was wrong, though I could not identify it at first. Then I noticed the shoes. Mine were black, non-slipwork shoes from the restaurant. Nothing strange there. But the shoes around me seemed off. A pair of Converse, okay. Air Jordan 4s, sure. But then there were Reebok pumps. When did people stop wearing those? Kitten heels, wedge flip-flops, old leather dress shoes polished to a shine. Shoes that belonged to different years, different decades. I slowly lifted my eyes. The people around me were wrong, too. A woman nearby was texting on a BlackBerry. A man farther down held a flip phone. Someone else had a brick-like phone that looked like it belonged in a museum. I saw a Walkman clipped to a belt. A Discman balanced carefully on someone's lap. A guy near the end of the car held an actual boombox between his feet. There were girls dressed like they were heading to a Madonna concert at Madison Square Garden. Guys in old Knicks jerseys. Men with slicked hair who looked like they had stepped out of the early 2000s Shore era. People from different pieces of time, all sitting together in the same train car. I looked down at my iPhone. It still said 3:21 a.m. That was impossible. It had been 3:19 when the train moved. I stared at the screen, waiting for the minute to change. It did not. Then I looked at the man in black. He was less like a man now. I could see the outline of his body, the hat, the coat, the shape of his shoulders, but darkness seemed to radiate from him. Not shadow, exactly. Shadows depend on light. This was different. It was a thick black presence spreading slowly around him, like ink dropped in water. It did not reflect anything. It swallowed the light near it. His face was still turned slightly away, or maybe he had no face at all. The blackness around him expanded until it touched the shoe of the man sitting next to him, a man in an old Knicks jersey with his head tipped back like he was sleeping. I watched, frozen. The darkness reached the man's foot, then climbed over it. It did not move quickly. It slid, patient and smooth, over his shoe, up his leg, across his lap. The man did not react. He did not wake. He did not scream. He just sat there while the void covered him. I looked around, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. People kept listening to music, reading, talking softly, staring at old devices. I felt that terrible bystander instinct rise in me. I did not want to be the crazy woman screaming on the train. I did not want everyone to look at me like I was losing my mind. But then the man's face disappeared into the black. I jumped up and grabbed his shoulder. "Sir," I said. "Sir." No response. "Sir." I yelled louder. His body remained loose and still. His head stayed tipped back. The darkness covered more of him, swallowing his chest, his neck, his mouth. "Someone help me." I screamed. I looked over my shoulder. Nobody moved. Some passengers kept talking as if I was not there. Others stared through me. One woman laughed quietly at something the man beside her said. The blackness took the Knicks fan completely, and then he was gone. Not dead. Gone, no body, no sound, no sign he had ever been there. The void began spreading in the other direction, toward the businesswoman with the BlackBerry. "Ma'am," I screamed. "Ma'am, move." She did not look up. "Oh, fuck this," I said. I ran toward the doors between cars. Maybe I could get into the next car. Maybe I could warn someone there. Maybe the rules of this thing stopped at the end of the car. Nobody watched me run, which helped in a strange way. Without judgmental eyes on me, I felt free to panic, honestly. I reached the door and pushed the button. It opened. On the other side was the opposite end of the same train car. I stood there, unable to breathe. "What the fuck?" I whispered. I stepped back slowly. I turned and looked over my shoulder. Behind me was the other end of the car, the place I had just left. In front of me was also the other end of the car. The train had folded into itself. No matter which way I looked, there were passengers, seats, lights, advertisements, and the spreading void. There was no next car. There was no exit. I thought about the passenger doors. If I could force them open, maybe I could jump. Maybe I would die on the tracks. Maybe that was better than whatever the void would do to me. I rushed to the side doors and grabbed at them, trying to pry them open. They would not move. My reflection stared back at me from the window, wide-eyed, wet, and shaking. Outside, the tunnel walls changed. Graffiti rushed past, but not modern tags. Old graffiti. Bright bubble letters, names, dates, styles from decades before I was born. Then the train slowed slightly, and I saw a station platform. Worth Street. My stomach turned. There had not been a Worth Street station since 1962. I knew that only because I had fallen down a late-night internet rabbit hole about abandoned subway stations a month after moving here. Worth Street was closed, gone from service, not a stop anyone could reach. But there it was, and people stood on the platform, rows of them. Waiting, they all looked at me, every single one. They were like the man in black, but not fully. Some wore old suits. Some wore work uniforms. Some looked like they came from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. Parts of them were human. Parts of them were black and empty, as if the void had taken pieces but left the rest behind. One woman had a normal face except for one eye, which was a dark hole leaking shadow. A man in a trench coat had blackness crawling up his neck. A child held a lunchbox with one arm made entirely of that same dead void. I pressed my hands to the glass and mouthed, "Help," they smiled. All of them. Their eyes moved with the train as it passed. I turned away, shaking. The panic began to fade then, not because I was safe, but because my body could not hold it anymore. Fear became something dull and heavy inside me. I looked down the car. More passengers were gone. The businesswoman had disappeared. A girl with big hoop earrings was being swallowed from the waist down and still laughing at something on her pink flip phone. The blackness spread in both directions now. The man in black had not moved. He sat still in the center of it all, his shape calm, his darkness growing. I checked my phone again. 3:21 a.m. Of course. I do not know where this train is going. I do not know what will happen when the void reaches me. Maybe I will disappear like the others. Maybe I will become one of the people waiting on the abandoned platforms, half human and half shadow, smiling at anyone unlucky enough to pass. Maybe this is where the lost things in New York go. Old trains, old stations, old people, old mistakes, all of them riding forever beneath a city that never sleeps. I have accepted that there may be no way out. There is no time left to worry when the clock refuses to move. My shoulders feel heavy now. The fight has gone out of me. I have taken a seat because my legs are shaking too badly to stand. I am looking around at what may become my final home. The advertisements above the seats are old. The map is wrong. The line marker says 9. The 9 train. A train that only ran from 1989 to 2005. I do not know how I ended up here. Maybe I should have waited. Maybe I should not have jumped the turnstile. Maybe I should not have been so impatient. Maybe none of that matters. Maybe the city takes who it wants, when it wants, and leaves the rest of the world running above it like nothing happened. The void is closer now. I can feel cold coming from it. If you are reading my final words, thank you for listening. And whatever you do, if you are in New York City late at night and a train arrives when the app says nothing is coming, do not get on. Do not trust the empty car. Do not sit across from the man in black. And if the map says 9, run before the doors close. Story 2. I was 12 years old when it happened, and even now, more than a decade later, I still think about that night more often than I want to admit. Back then, my home life was not good. I will not go into every detail, because that is a different kind of story, but the simple version is that I did not feel safe or understood most of the time. My family was tense, loud, and unpredictable. I was old enough to know things were wrong, but too young to do anything about them. So I dealt with it in the only way I knew how. I wandered off. That became my small rebellion. Other kids might sneak out to meet friends or do things they were not supposed to do. I just wanted to be alone. I would walk away from noise, from arguments, from people telling me what to do, and I would find somewhere quiet where nobody could bother me. Being by myself felt peaceful. It felt like the only time I had control over my own life. I never thought that habit would put me in danger. I never thought that one day I would look back and wish I had stayed close to people, even people I did not want to be around. It was August, which is winter in Australia. My mother and older sister had forced me to go to a large church camp. I did not want to go. I did not want to spend a week surrounded by strangers, worship events, workshops, bands, preachers, youth groups, and adults, acting like everything in life could be fixed with the right Bible verse and a group prayer. But I was 12, so my opinion did not matter much. The camp was held on a huge property that stretched deep into the Australian bush. It was not a small weekend campsite with a few cabins and a fire pit. It was massive. Thousands of people came every year, and for 1 week, the whole place turned into this temporary village of tents, caravans, food stalls, event spaces, and huge performance tents. The inner part of the campground was where most people wanted to be. That was where all the lights were. That was where the big tents stood, where the bands played, where the preachers spoke, and where everyone gathered at night. There were smaller tents, too, some for kids, some for teenagers, some for adults, and some for workshops that seemed to run all day. Most families tried to set up as close to that area as possible because it meant shorter walks to bathrooms, food, and events. But if you were unlucky, or if you arrived late, you got pushed farther out toward the edge of the campground, where the bush started to take over again. We were unlucky. It was me, my older sister, and her friend. We ended up setting our camp in a quiet section near the edge of the grounds, right beside the deep forest. There was a small caravan about 100 meters to our left, and another small group of tents more than 100 meters to our right. In front of us was nothing but bush, gum trees, scrub, dry leaves, and darkness. It felt far away from everything, even though technically we were still part of the camp. To reach the nearest bathrooms, you had to walk around 15 minutes. To get to the main event area, it took closer to 20. At night, that walk felt much longer. My sister and her friend complained about it, but I secretly liked it. I liked that we were away from everyone. I liked that the noise from the main camp was faint by the time it reached us. I liked that people did not wander by every few minutes. The caravan to our left seemed almost abandoned. I never saw anyone coming in or out of it. The family in the tents to our right was always gone, probably spending all day and night at the main events. That meant our little section stayed quiet. For me, that felt like a gift. It meant I could get away from everyone and have some space to breathe. The first few days were normal. I went to some events because my sister made me. I sat through talks I did not care about. I listened to music I did not want to hear. I watched groups of teenagers form little circles and laugh with each other, and I stayed mostly on the outside. I was not very social at that age. I did not know how to be. I felt angry most of the time, and when I was not angry, I felt tired. So whenever I had a chance, I slipped away. I would go back to our tent, sit outside in the cold air, listen to music through my earphones, and look into the trees. One night, there was a big event in the main tent. It was one of those events everyone talked about all day. A famous band was playing, and some preacher people were excited about was speaking afterward. Practically everyone at the camp wanted to go. By the time it started, most of the tents and caravans around the grounds were empty. Everyone was packed near the main tent, and the distant sound of music drifted through the campground. To me, that seemed like the perfect time to leave. I told my sister I felt sick. It was not a dramatic lie. I did feel sick in a way, just not physically. I was tired of crowds, tired of noise, tired of pretending to care. My sister barely looked at me before telling me to go lie down. Her friend asked if I wanted her to walk with me, but I shook my head. The last thing I wanted was company. I put in my earphones, started blasting My Chemical Romance, and began the long walk back toward our campsite. On the way, I decided to stop at the bathroom. The nearest bathroom was a small brick building set a little off one of the walking paths. It had a couple of showers and toilet stalls inside. The men's side was on the opposite side of the building, completely separate from the women's. Usually there were at least a few people around it, especially at night, because nobody wanted to walk all the way to the main facilities. But that night, it was empty. I was not surprised. I figured everyone was either at the big event or lined up at the bathrooms closer to the main tent. I went inside with my music still playing, barely paying attention. I was in that half-zoned out state where you are physically somewhere but mentally far away. I do not think I was inside for more than 5 minutes, maybe less. I washed my hands, adjusted my earphones, and pushed the door open. That was when I saw him. A tall man was standing just outside the women's bathroom, leaning against the brick wall. He wore a long black coat. He was not old. I would guess he was in his 20s, though to me at 12, anyone over 18 seemed fully grown. I stopped for a second because I was confused. My first thought was that he was waiting for his girlfriend or wife to finish using the bathroom. That would have made sense. Men waited outside bathrooms all the time. Then I remembered the bathroom had been empty. There had been no one else inside. No voices. No footsteps. No running water. And now, as I looked around, I realized there was no one outside either. The whole area was silent except for the faint music from the main event far away and the sound leaking through my earphones. There were no people walking on the path. No families. No groups of teenagers. Just me and this man standing by the bathroom wall. I started walking past him, trying to act like I had not noticed anything strange. But I was curious. I could not help it. After a few steps, I turned my head to look at him again. His eyes met mine. I have never forgotten them. They were dark and empty, but not in a tired way. They looked dead, yet full of hatred at the same time. I know that sounds impossible, but that is the only way I can describe it. It was like there was nothing human behind them except something angry. Something focused. He looked at me like he was not just seeing a 12-year-old girl walking by. He looked like he was imagining something awful, something unspeakable. That look burned itself into my mind so fast that my whole body reacted before I understood why. A cold wave of dread went through me. I snapped my head forward and started walking faster. Not running, because I did not want him to know he had scared me, but fast enough that my shoes scuffed against the dirt. I could still feel his eyes on my back. My music was still playing, but suddenly it sounded distant and wrong. I pulled one earphone out so I could hear behind me. I walked through the dark, heading toward our campsite. Every few moments, I thought I heard something behind me. A heavy thud, a shoe dragging against dirt, a twig snapping. Each time, I spun around, expecting to see the man in the black coat following me. Each time, I saw nothing but gum trees, shadows, and the pale path behind me. I tried to laugh at myself. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself I was a coward who had scared herself because some random guy looked a little creepy. But my body did not believe that. When I finally reached our campsite, I did not sit outside like I had planned. I threw myself into the tent, zipped it shut, crawled into my sleeping bag, and pulled it up around me. I left one earphone in, but turned the music low. My heart was still beating too fast. I kept telling myself I was safe now. I was in the tent. My sister would be back later. Nothing had happened. Then I heard footsteps. They were quiet at first, but heavy. Slow, weighty thuds on the dirt. Someone was coming closer to our camp. At first, the footsteps moved fast, like whoever it was had been walking with purpose. Then they stopped. A few seconds later, they started again, slower this time. The direction changed. A few heavy steps to the right of the tent. Then behind me. Then above me, near the top side of the tent, where my head was. Then below me, near my feet. I held my breath. I wanted to grab my phone and message my sister. I wanted to call her and tell her to come back right now. But fear kept me still. If it was the same man, and if he knew I was inside, I did not want my phone lighting up the tent. I did not want him to hear me whisper. I did not want to give him any reason to know exactly where I was. So I stayed completely silent, barely breathing, listening to those footsteps move around me. After what felt like forever, the steps moved away toward the left, in the direction of the caravan. Then there was silence. I waited, then waited longer. Only when I was sure I could not hear anything anymore did I unlock my phone and message my sister. I asked when she and her friend were coming back. Thankfully, they were already on their way. When they arrived, I came out of the tent and told my sister about the man at the bathroom and how he had stared at me. I told her I thought someone had been walking around our tent after I got back. She waved it off immediately. She told me I was being immature and dramatic. She said I always wanted attention when I did not get my way. Her friend looked uncomfortable, but did not say much. I tried to explain that it was not just a normal, weird person, that his eyes had scared me, but my sister rolled her eyes and told me to go to sleep. So I dropped it. For the next 2 nights, nothing else happened. I did not see the man. I did not hear footsteps around the tent. I started to convince myself that maybe my sister was right. Maybe I had scared myself. Maybe the footsteps had been someone from the caravan or the family on the other side returning late. Maybe the man at the bathroom really had been waiting for someone, and I had just not seen them. Fear can twist things, especially when you are 12, alone, and already upset with the world. By the 3rd night, I almost believed that. Then, I saw him again. It was earlier in the evening this time, before everything was fully dark. I was walking with my sister and her friend when we passed near that same bathroom building. He was standing in the same spot, leaning near the women's side again, wearing the same long black coat. My stomach dropped the moment I saw him. He did not look directly at me this time. Instead, he side-eyed me as I passed. But somehow, that was worse. It was not the same sudden hateful stare as before. This time, there was something else mixed into it. Something patient. Something like observation. Like he was studying me. I stayed close to my sister for most of that night. I did not want to admit I was scared. but I was. Every time we walked between tents, I looked around for the black coat. Every time someone passed behind me, my shoulders tightened. My sister noticed and told me to stop acting weird, so I tried, but I could not get his eyes out of my head. We went to bed late. My sister and her friend fell asleep quickly. I lay awake in my tent, listening to the distant music, the wind moving through the trees, and the occasional sound of someone walking far away through the campground. Around 1 or 2 in the morning, I realized I needed the bathroom again. The thought of walking 15 minutes through the dark to the bathroom where I had seen him twice made my whole body lock up. I could not do it. I knew I should wake my sister and ask her to come with me, but I also knew she would be angry. She would tell me I was being childish. She might refuse anyway, and I did not want to stand outside the tent in the dark arguing with her. So, I made a stupid decision. I decided to go into the bush. Not far, just a few meters. Enough to get away from the tent, but not so far that I could not run back. I stepped carefully into the scrub, stomping my feet a little, because that is what Australians are taught to do if they are walking in bush at night. Make noise. Scare away snakes or anything else that might be hiding. The ground was cold and uneven under my shoes. The trees were dark shapes above me. I kept glancing back at the tent, making sure I could still see it. Then, I heard a quiet thud to my right. A shrub moved slightly. I froze. At first, I thought maybe it was a kangaroo or some animal I had startled. My eyes searched the dark, expecting to see the shape of something low and furry. Instead, my gaze moved toward a gum tree a few meters away. There was a figure behind it, half hidden, half visible. It was standing with part of its body behind the tree, as if trying to hide while also peeking out. For a second, I could not move or breathe. My mind refused to make sense of what I was seeing. Then the figure stepped out from behind the tree. It was him, the man in the black coat. He took one step closer. Then, in a low whisper, he said, "Hey, hey." I do not know why I answered. I have thought about that moment so many times, and I still do not understand it. Maybe I was too shocked. Maybe I was too young. Maybe some part of me thought if I replied, he would stop. My voice came out small and broken. "What?" The second the word left my mouth, something in me snapped awake. I turned and ran. I ran straight back toward the tent, branches scratching at my legs, my breath catching in my throat. The camp looked impossibly far away, even though it was only a few meters. I expected to hear him running after me. I expected to feel a hand grab the back of my shirt. I did not look behind me. I just ran. Now, you would think that after something like that, I would immediately wake my sister. That would have been the smart thing to do. I should have screamed. I should have shaken her awake. I should have run to the nearest group of tents. I should have done anything except what I did. But I was so gripped by fear that I could not stand being out in the open for one more second. I threw myself into my tent, zipped it shut, and hid under my sleeping bag. I was shaking so hard my teeth clicked together. I waited for footsteps. I waited for his voice. I waited for the zipper to move. Nothing happened. The rest of the night was silent. I did not sleep at all. The moment the sun rose, I climbed out of the tent. My body felt heavy and hollow, like I had spent the night holding my breath. The first thing I noticed was the caravan to our left. It was gone. That caravan had been sitting there the whole time, looking practically abandoned. I had never seen anyone use it. I had never seen anyone pack it. I had never seen anyone come or go. And now, in the early morning light, it was just gone. Empty space, flattened grass, tire marks in the dirt. When my sister woke up, I told her everything. I told her about seeing him behind the tree. I told her he had whispered to me. I told her about running back to the tent and staying awake all night. She did not comfort me. She scolded me for going into the bush in the middle of the night. She told me I could have been bitten by a snake or gotten lost. She did not believe the part about the man, or if she did, she acted like it was my fault for being out there. After that, life moved on because life always does, even after something terrible almost happens. The camp ended. We packed up. We went home. I returned to school, to my family problems, to being angry and alone. Nobody reported anything. Nobody came looking for a man in a black coat. Nobody asked if a young girl had been followed near the bathrooms. For everyone else, it was just another church camp. But for me, something changed. I am 25 now, and I still see his eyes when I try to sleep sometimes. Dark, hollow dead, but burning with hatred. I still remember the way he stood halfway behind that gum tree, watching me. I still hear that whispered hey in my head. I think about how empty the campgrounds were that night. I think about how far we were from the nearest bathrooms, from the lights, from other people. I think about how easy it would have been for him to grab me if I had walked just a little farther into the bush. I think about the caravan disappearing the next morning. I do not know who that man was. I do not know if he had been staying in that caravan or if he only used that area because it was quiet and dark. I do not know if he had seen me wandering alone before and decided I was an easy target. I do not know what would have happened if I had frozen for 1 second longer or if I had taken one more step toward him. But I know one thing with absolute certainty. He had the worst intentions, and I simply got lucky. Story 3. I think something is inside my laptop. I'm not crazy. I know everyone says that, but I'm not saying it to be dramatic. I'm saying it because I can feel how impossible this sounds, and because if I don't explain this the right way, you'll assume I'm making it up or having some kind of break. I'm a writer. I'm not new to dark ideas. I'm not new to imagining things. I'm also not new to the way stress can mess with your head when you don't sleep enough. That's part of why this scares me so badly. I've spent my whole life learning how to tell the difference between what's in my head and what's in the world. And this is in the world. It started last week, and I keep thinking if I write it down in the right order, it'll sound more normal. Like there's a clean explanation waiting at the end. Like I'll get to a point where I can laugh at myself, close the laptop, and go back to my novel. But every time I try to write about anything else, it happens again. The cursor. It just sits there, in the middle of the screen, blinking like an eye. And I know how that sounds, but that's the best way to describe it. It doesn't feel like a normal cursor. It feels aware. Every third blink, I swear it curves, just slightly, into something that looks like a smile. Not a cartoon smile, not an obvious shape. Just the tiniest curve that makes my stomach turn. It doesn't pulse, not really. It breathes. And if I stare at it too long, I get that awful sense you get when you're standing in front of a window at night and you suddenly realize you can't tell what's outside and what's reflected behind you. My dad used to say something that never made sense to me until now. He hated technology. He didn't trust it. He made fun of me once at a family dinner because I ran out of the room to write something down before I forgot it. I joked that my laptop was my best friend. He said I was obsessed. Then he said, "You shouldn't trust anything if you can't see where it keeps its brain." At the time, I rolled my eyes. It sounded like one of his old man lines. The kind of thing people say when they don't understand what they're afraid of. Now it haunts me. Because I keep thinking about what I saw, and I keep hearing his voice in my head, and I keep wondering if my laptop has a brain now, and if it's learning me. I should start at the beginning, so you can see why I'm so sure I'm not imagining this. Most days, I write at the public library. I can't afford a nice office. I can barely afford rent. The library has free Wi-Fi, quiet corners, and a kind of steady calm that helps me focus. I bring my laptop everywhere. It's practically attached to me. Not because I love the machine, but because it holds my work, my notes, my drafts, my whole messy attempt at building a career. Last Thursday, I got to the Hillvale Library just after 5. It was one of the days the library stayed open late, until 9. Those extended hours had become part of my routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays after work, I'd stop by, buy a coffee, and head straight to my spot. My spot was a banquet near the stairs, tucked away from the main desk, but still in view of the ground floor. I liked it because it felt private, without being isolated. I liked it because I could spread out, laptop, coffee, a favorite pen, a scratch pad where I could scribble scenes when typing felt too stiff. But mostly I liked that spot because of the mirror. The library's main stairway rises up 4 floors, and along the wall behind the railing is this massive obsidian mirror. It's not like a normal mirror. The glass is dark, almost black, and it doesn't reflect the way you expect. It catches light in a deep, oily way, like the surface has thickness. Somebody in town told me it was donated in the 80s by a private collector who specialized in indigenous Aztec glass art. I don't know if that's true. I never cared enough to research it. I just know it's the most beautiful thing in the building. It makes the stairwell feel like a museum. From my seat, I can see the mirror at an angle, and I can see most of the first floor. It's the best view in the place. I didn't know, until that night, that the mirror might have been looking back. I'd met Bobby a couple weeks earlier, when I started coming in on late nights. He was a library employee, usually working upstairs, but on extended hours, he covered the ground floor desk. He and I became friendly fast. He liked the fact that I was writing a novel, and he'd ask me how it was going. I'd pester him with research questions, small stuff like, what year did this kind of phone get popular? Or, how would a local paper describe this crime? Or would this building have had that kind of security system? He answered like someone who actually liked helping, not like someone counting down until closing. That Thursday, when he came down the stairs to start his shift, I waved like I always did. He gave me a small thumbs up and slid behind the desk. But he didn't look like himself. He didn't smile. He didn't come over and make a joke. He didn't ask what I was working on. His posture was stiff, and his face looked tired, like he'd been up for 2 nights straight. I caught him staring at nothing for a second, then blinking hard like he was trying to reset his focus. I assumed he was just having a bad day. Everyone has those. So I went back to writing. My novel is sort of experimental, to be honest. It's about an ordinary man who stumbles into something supernatural. A normal person with a normal life who steps into a place he shouldn't have and realizes the rules are different there. It feels almost embarrassing to admit that now, because that's exactly what happened to me. I was editing a scene deep in my head when I heard Bobby laughing at the desk. At first, I didn't pay attention. Libraries aren't silent the way people think. There's always someone whispering, someone coughing, a printer going, a phone vibrating. Sound doesn't usually bother me when I'm focused, but Bobby's laugh made my skin tighten. It didn't sound like one person laughing. It sounded like 2 laughs layered over each other, slightly out of sync, like a voice and its echo didn't match. It was dissonant in a way that made the hair on the back of my arm stand up. I turned in my seat to look, ready to give him a look that said, "Come on, man." I only saw Bobby. He was smiling and talking, but he wasn't talking to a patron. There was no one at the desk, no one in front of him, no one leaning over the counter. Just him, looking at empty air, laughing softly like someone had just told him a joke. I stared too long, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then I turned back toward the stairway mirror without meaning to. It was like my eyes moved there on their own. In the mirror, Bobby wasn't alone. Someone stood beside him. Close, too close, like they'd leaned into his space. The figure wasn't clear, not the way a reflection should be. It looked slightly delayed, slightly stretched, as if the mirror needed an extra moment to decide what it was showing. The shape had a head, shoulders, arms. It was positioned like it was speaking into Bobby's ear. I twisted in my seat to look directly at the desk again. Only Bobby. Empty air. I looked back to the mirror. The thing was still there. And then it stopped moving its mouth and turned its head toward me. Our eyes met in the mirror. The second that happened, my laptop speakers screamed. Not a normal sound, not an alert, not feedback. It was metallic and high, like something scraping inside a machine, but it carried something else too, something guttural, like a human scream forced through electronics. It was so loud it made my vision blur. I panicked. I dug into my settings. Volume down. Mute, nothing. I unplugged the charger. Nothing. I tried to shut the laptop down. The screen froze. I slammed the lid shut. The sound kept going, muffled, but still loud enough to draw attention. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The quiet that followed was worse. The library felt too still, like the building was holding its breath. A hand tapped my shoulder. I nearly threw the laptop off the table. "Hey, Nate," Bobby said. "You okay, man?" It was him. Just him. His face was close, concerned, normal. I swallowed hard. "Yeah," I said, trying to make my voice steady. "Sorry, my laptop was making this high-pitched sound and I couldn't get it to stop." Bobby frowned. "What sound?" I looked down. My laptop was silent. Dark dead, I pushed the power button. Nothing. It had been fully charged minutes earlier. Now it was like the battery didn't exist. Bobby went into problem-solving mode like he enjoyed fixing things. "Did it show any message? Anything pop up before it died?" "No," I said. "Just that sound, and then nothing." He scratched his jaw, thinking, "If you want, leave it here with me overnight. I can take a look, run a diagnostic, maybe back it up and restore it. You can swing by tomorrow on your way to work." Relief washed over me. I didn't want to take that dead laptop home. I didn't want it near my bed. I didn't want to carry it in the dark. I wanted it behind the desk, in the bright library, with someone else responsible for it. "Yeah," I said quickly. "That would help a lot. That laptop is basically my life." Bobby gave me a light clap on the shoulder. "I've got you." I put the laptop in my bag with the charger and handed it over. Bobby carried it behind the desk like it was a normal object, like it wasn't the source of the loudest, ugliest sound I'd ever heard. I left soon after, my skin still crawling. I waved at Bobby on my way out. He waved back. That was the last time I saw him alive. The next morning, the paper called it an accident. By Friday afternoon, when I went back to the library to ask about my laptop, crime scene tape blocked the entrance and police cars lined the curb. The lobby was closed off. People gathered on the sidewalk like they were waiting for a parade they didn't want to see. I asked the deputy if I could just go in and grab my laptop, that it was important, that it had my work. He looked at me the way cops look at civilians who don't understand what a crime scene is. He had me fill out an inquiry form and told me they'd contact me if they found it and if it wasn't considered evidence. I didn't hear anything for days. Then yesterday, the police called and told me I could pick it up downtown. When they handed it to me, it looked normal. No cracks, no visible damage. I took it home, plugged it in, and it started right up. Battery fine, screen fine, keyboard fine. It worked like nothing had ever happened. So I tried to pretend nothing had happened. I tried to put Bobby out of my head. I tried to tell myself the mirror thing was stress, the sound was a glitch, the timing was just terrible luck. I went back to my routine anyway. Coffee shop, library, same booth near the stairs. Laptop, coffee, pen, pad, everything felt normal for a few minutes. Then my thumb caught on something on the trackpad. I looked closer. A dime-sized stain sat between the edge of the trackpad and the wrist rest, crusted over so thoroughly it almost blended into the plastic. It looked like something had dried there and hardened. I scraped at it with a fingernail, and flecks of reddish brown came away. I kept my laptop clean. I'm obsessive about it. I knew that stain wasn't there when I gave it to Bobby. I lifted my finger to my nose and smelled it. Faint copper. Blood. I don't know why I looked up at the mirror right then. It wasn't a decision. It was like the mirror pulled my eyes. At first I saw my own reflection, my face pale in the dark glass because of the laptop's glow. Then I blinked, and behind my shoulder in the mirror, someone was standing. Not behind me in the room, behind me in the reflection. A face leaned down close to my ear. Hands rose as if they were about to settle on my shoulders. In the real world, I felt cold seep into my shoulder and run down my arms into my hands. A deep chill that didn't feel like air conditioning. It felt like the absence of warmth. I snapped my eyes back to my laptop screen. Words were there that I hadn't typed. Hi, Nate. My name is Angie. Do you want to hear a scary story? I slammed the laptop shut so hard my coffee jumped in its cup. I shoved everything into my bag and left the library like my body had decided for me. I didn't check out. I didn't look at the desk. I didn't look at the mirror again. That was yesterday. Sunday. Today is Monday. And I haven't slept. Not really. Maybe a few minutes here and there, but not enough to count. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mirror's dark surface, and that half-second blur when it decided what it was showing. I think something followed me home. I don't know if it's attached to the laptop or to me. I've tried to do normal things to prove I still control my body. Stretching, showering, massaging my hands, writing by hand with a pen like it's 1995. None of it helped. The itching in my fingers has been getting worse all day. It's not an allergy itch. It's deep, like the itch is in my bones, and my fingers keep curling as if they're searching for keys, as if typing is the only thing that will relieve it. I haven't touched the laptop since yesterday. Until a few minutes ago, I told myself it was broad daylight. Nothing happens in daylight. That's what people say. That's what stories teach you to believe. Monsters need dark corners and midnight hours. The laptop sat on my coffee table looking normal, quiet, even inviting, and that way your own things feel safe just because they belong to you. I picked it up. When I opened it, the screen stayed dark. The power button didn't work, even though it had been on the charger all night. I thought, okay, maybe it finally died for real. Maybe it's actually broken. Maybe this ends with a simple, boring explanation and a trip to a repair shop. Then something flickered. I leaned in. A cursor appeared in the middle of the screen. Just one, blinking, and then letters began to show up, one by one, as if someone was typing very carefully from the other side of the glass. My blood went cold. Bobby has such beautiful eyes. I really enjoyed taking them out by hand. Don't you want to see? I'm sitting here staring at that last line. My hands are hovering over the keyboard like they don't belong to me. The cursor is still blinking, steady, patient, like it has all the time in the world. And the worst part is this. I can feel my fingers wanting to type back. Not because I want to, because something in me wants to answer. Story 4. I need help, and I do not know where else to ask without sounding like I am losing my mind. I have loved ghost stories for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I was always the one begging my friends to tell scary stories at sleepovers, even when everyone else wanted to watch cartoons or play games. I loved the whole ritual of it. The lights turned off, blankets pulled up to our chins, someone holding a flashlight under their face while they whispered about the woman in white, the hand under the bed, the thing knocking from inside the closet. Later, when we got older, it turned into horror movie nights, streaming whatever we could find, laughing too loudly during the safe parts, and screaming when something jumped out. We did Bloody Mary in bathroom mirrors more times than I can count. We turned off the lights, stood in front of the glass, said her name until one of us panicked, and then ran out laughing and shoving each other. I spent too many nights at 2 a.m. falling down creepypasta rabbit holes, reading posts about cursed games, missing hikers, strange broadcasts, and old websites nobody was supposed to open. I liked being scared. I want to make that very clear. I am not someone who gets nervous because a house creaks. I am not someone who hears wind outside and decides it is a ghost. I know what fun fear feels like. I know the thrill of wanting to be scared while still knowing you are safe. I know the difference between sitting in a dark room reading a creepy story and feeling a cold little shiver crawl up your neck because your imagination is doing its job. What has been happening to me since last week is not that. This is not fun scared. This is not movie scared. This is not the kind of fear you can turn off by switching on the lights or laughing with your friends. This is something deeper. It sits in my stomach all day. It follows me from room to room. It waits in the corners when I try to sleep. I do not feel excited by it. I do not feel entertained. I feel watched. I feel hunted. And the worst part is that I know this is my fault. It started with an extra credit assignment. I am taking American history this semester, and right before spring break. My professor gave us an optional assignment. He asked us to visit our hometown libraries and look for old, out-of-print books about local legends. He said every town has folklore if you dig deep enough. Old ghost stories, strange disappearances, haunted bridges, cursed roads, witch trials that never made it into textbooks, monsters people only talk about in whispers. He wanted us to find something that could not be found easily online and write a short paper about it. Most of the class groaned when he described it, but I got excited right away. It sounded like something made for me. I was already going home for break, and digging through old books for forgotten legends was exactly the kind of thing I liked. I am lucky to be from a town with a beautiful library. It was renovated a few years ago, but they kept most of the old style. The building has tall Gothic windows, dark wood trim, and floor after floor of shelves. There is a reading room on the second floor with leather chairs that smell like my grandfather's study used to smell. Warm dust, old paper, and something faintly sweet, like pipe tobacco soaked into the walls from decades ago. On weekends, the place is full of kids, parents, older people reading newspapers, students pretending to study, and people using the computers. But on a weekday morning, when most adults are at work and most kids are in school, the library becomes so quiet that the quiet itself feels alive. It does not feel empty. It feels like something holding still. That was how it felt when I went in. The light came through the tall windows in pale gold strips, touching the floors and shelves, but even the light seemed quiet. Hushed, like it did not want to disturb whatever slept between the books. I remember standing near the entrance for a few seconds, breathing in that old paper smell and feeling happy. This was supposed to be the perfect assignment. A harmless little hunt for spooky stories. Something I could enjoy, write about, and maybe even share with Ella later. Ella is my best friend. We have been almost inseparable since second grade. She knows every embarrassing thing about me, every crush I ever had, every bad haircut, every family fight, every nightmare phase, every obsession. She is the kind of friend who answers the phone even when she is mad at you. She is also the one who did Bloody Mary with me the most when we were younger. I think that is why I thought of her later. Because if there was one person who would understand why I was excited about a weird old ritual in a forgotten book, it was Ella. I found Mrs. Granger first. She is one of the librarians, and she has worked there for as long as I can remember. When I was little, she helped me find books about ghosts, dragons, and girls who solved mysteries. She has the kind of face that always looks kind but tired, like she has seen generations of kids grow up and return as adults with overdue fines. I told her about my assignment and asked if the library had anything old or unusual about local legends. She looked pleased at first, then thoughtful, then a little strange. There might be something in the local history room, she said. She pointed me toward a room on the top floor, all the way in the back. I had never been there before. I did not even know the library had a room like that. She told me it was mostly older books, local records, donated collections, things people rarely asked for. I thanked her and headed upstairs. The higher I went, the quieter the library became. On the first floor, I could hear the soft beep of the checkout desk and the low murmur of people talking. On the second floor, those sounds faded. By the time I reached the top floor, there was almost nothing, just the soft hum of lights and my own footsteps on the carpet. The room was tucked in a back corner behind a heavy wooden door. There were no windows. The air inside felt cool and dry. It was well kept. Not dusty or abandoned, but it was clear that not many people went in there. The shelves were neat. The books looked old but cared for. Some had faded cloth covers. Some were wrapped in clear protective jackets. There was a long table in the middle of the room with 2 lamps, both off. I turned one on and started browsing. At first, I judged the books by their covers. I know you are not supposed to, but with old books, the covers tell you a lot. I found local histories, old cemetery records, town anniversary publications, books about nearby settlements, and a few thin paperbacks about ghost stories in the region. Then one book stopped me, Lost Lore of the Americas by Johann Milner Burroughs. I do not know why it caught my attention. The cover was plain, dark green, with the title stamped in faded gold letters. It was not dramatic. It did not look cursed. It did not look like some evil thing waiting to be opened. But when I saw it, I felt this small pull in my chest, like recognition. I had never heard of the author. I had never heard of the book. Still, something about it made me slide it off the shelf. I have tried searching for it online since then. I cannot find anything. No listing, no archive, no used copies, no record of Johann Milner Burroughs that matches. That is part of why I am posting this. If anyone reading this has ever come across Lost Lore of the Americas, please tell me, even if you only saw it once, even if it was in some weird collection somewhere. I need to know I did not imagine it. I sat at the table and opened the book. The pages smelled old, but not unpleasant. It was full of chapters about strange legends from different regions. Some sounded familiar, like variations of stories I had read before. Others were completely new to me. I flipped through until I found a chapter titled The Muffled Man. The name alone made me pause. The story felt familiar in a way I still cannot explain. It was like hearing a song from childhood, but not remembering where you heard it. The chapter described a figure that appeared in houses, libraries, schools, churches, any place where stories had been told often enough for fear to settle into the walls. The muffled man was not described clearly. That was one of the strangest things. The text kept saying that nobody who saw him could agree on what he looked like. Some said he was tall and wrapped in layers of cloth. Some said he had no face, only a dark shape under fabric. Some said he moved like a person underwater. Some said he was always behind you, but if you turned too fast, he would become part of the dark. The one detail that stayed the same was the sound, or rather, the lack of it. He was called the Muffled Man because he took sound with him. Footsteps went dull when he was close. Voices sounded like they came through walls. Screams became whispers. The book said he did not attack right away. He followed first. He learned voices. He found the fears people had buried deepest, then pressed on them gently, night after night, until they opened. The chapter was written in this dry, academic style, but something about it made my hands cold. Then I found the ritual. I know how stupid that sounds. I know. Believe me, I have repeated that to myself every hour since. But at the time, it did not feel different from any other scary game. We had done Bloody Mary. We had played with a Ouija board once in 7th grade, though nothing happened besides Ella accusing me of pushing the planchette. We had dared each other to walk through cemeteries at night. We had whispered names into mirrors and laughed when nothing came. The ritual in the book seemed simple, too simple. It required 2 people, a dark room, a mirror, a candle, and a phrase from the text. I am not going to write the phrase here. I know that might frustrate people who want to help, but I will not risk someone else trying it. I will say that the words did not sound like Latin or any language I recognized. The book said they were a softened invitation, whatever that means. It also said the ritual should not be performed by anyone unwilling to be heard in return. I thought that was creepy wording. I did not think it was a real warning. I checked the book out, though Mrs. Granger looked surprised when she scanned it. I remember her pausing with her hand on the cover. "Where did you find this?" she asked. "In the local history room," I said. She looked down at the title again, then forced a smile. I didn't know we still had that. At the time, I thought librarians probably said that about old books all the time. Now I keep thinking about her face. That night, I called Ella. I told her I found something perfect for my assignment and that it had a summoning ritual. She laughed and asked if I was serious. I told her it was probably fake, but it would be fun. We could try it, and then I could write about the experience in my paper. She said yes, because she trusted me. I wish she had not. We did it in my bathroom around midnight. I turned off the lights, lit a candle, and placed it on the sink. Ella stood beside me, trying not to laugh. The mirror reflected both of us in the orange candlelight, our faces nervous and excited. I had the book open on the counter. We read the instructions twice, then followed them. For the first minute, nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. We whispered the phrase together, and our voices sounded small in the bathroom. Ella started laughing halfway through, and I elbowed her. We said it again. Then again. On the 3rd time, the candle flame went low, not out. Low, like something had pressed the air down over it. The bathroom became very quiet. Not normal quiet. Not midnight quiet. It felt like all the sound in the house had been stuffed under a blanket. The hum of the vent disappeared. The small noises from the pipes vanished. Even our breathing sounded far away. Ella stopped smiling. In the mirror behind us, something moved. It was only there for a second. A dark shape. taller than either of us, standing in the bathroom doorway. Wrapped, maybe, or blurred. I cannot describe it clearly. My mind slides away from the memory whenever I try to look directly at it. But I remember one thing. The shape leaned forward like it was listening. Then, the candle went out. Ella screamed, but it came out wrong. It sounded muffled, like she was screaming from inside a closet. I turned on the lights. Nothing was there. The bathroom door was open. The hallway was empty. We tried to laugh it off. We really did. Ella said it was probably the air from the vent. I said I must have imagined the shape because I was staring too hard at the mirror. We both spoke too fast, too loudly, trying to fill the silence. She went home not long after. I slept with the lights on. That was 6 days ago. Since then, things have gotten worse. I hear footsteps behind me when no one is there. Not loud footsteps. Soft ones. Dragging ones. They stop when I stop. They start when I start. At first, it only happened at night, walking from my bedroom to the kitchen, or from the bathroom back to bed. Now it happens in daylight, too. Yesterday afternoon, I was walking across campus with people all around me, and I heard those steps behind me, slow and heavy, completely out of rhythm with everyone else. I turned around so fast, the girl behind me almost bumped into me. There was nothing there. I was never afraid of the dark before. I am now. Not in the vague way where your imagination turns a pile of clothes into a person. I am afraid because things move in it that should not move. Shadows shift where no light changes. Corners deepen when I look away. Sometimes, when I walk past a dark window, I see something behind my reflection. But when I turn, there is only the room. Last night, I watched the shadow of my desk chair stretch across the wall, even though the chair itself did not move. The shadow leaned toward me. The worst part is what happens when I am almost asleep. Every night, right at the edge of sleep, I hear soft cackling. Not loud, not close exactly. It sounds like someone laughing through layers of cloth. A wet, hidden little laugh. The first time, I sat up and turned on every light in my room. The second night, I put headphones on and played music. But I heard it under the music. The third night, I heard it from inside the wall beside my bed. Yesterday morning, I woke up with scratches on my forearm. 3 thin lines, red and raised, running from my wrist almost to my elbow. They were not there when I went to bed. I keep my nails short. There is nothing sharp near my bed. I tried to tell myself I scratched my arm in my sleep, but the marks were too straight, too even. Ella called me an hour later. I had sent her messages, but she had not seen them yet. Before I could tell her about my arm, she started talking about her night. She said she heard footsteps behind her while she brushed her teeth. She said her bedroom went quiet in that same muffled way. She said she woke up at 3:17 a.m. because someone was laughing softly near her closet. Then she sent me a photo. 3 scratches on her arm, same place as mine. That was when we both stopped pretending this was just fear or stress or some shared overreaction. The details matched too closely. We spent the rest of the call crying and talking over each other. She asked me what the book said about stopping it. I told her there had been a casting out spell mentioned after the ritual. I remembered seeing the words. I remembered feeling comforted by that, like the book had a built-in safety switch. I went back to check. The pages were gone. The next several pages after the ritual had been torn out, not cut neatly. Torn, ragged strips of paper still clung to the binding. I do not know who tore them out. I do not know when. They were there when I first read the chapter. At least, I think they were. I saw the heading for the casting out spell. I know I did. But now, it is gone. I do not know if someone tore the pages out to warn people, or if they tore them out to trap whoever was stupid enough to invite him in. I called the library and asked for Mrs. Granger. They said she was not in. I asked when she would be back. They said she had taken sudden leave. I asked if anyone else knew about lost lore of the Americas. The woman on the phone went quiet for a long second, then said she did not know what I meant. When I described the book, she told me there was no record of it in their system. But I checked it out. I held it. Mrs. Granger scanned it. It is sitting on my desk right now. I tried to return it this morning, but when I got near the library, I heard the cackling from the back seat of my car. I drove past the building and did not stop. I have not been able to make myself go back. Ella is not answering now. She texted me 2 hours ago and said, "It sounds like you." I called her right away. No answer. I have sent message after message. Nothing. I do not know if she means she heard something that sounded like me, or if she saw something that looked like me, or if the thing is learning my voice now. I keep calling, but every time the line rings, I hear a second sound beneath it. Soft breathing. Muffled. Waiting. So please, if anyone has heard of the Muffled Man, if anyone has seen the book Lost Lore of the Americas, if anyone knows Johann Milner Burroughs, or The Ritual, or The Casting Out Spell, reply to me. I am not being dramatic. I am not doing a bit. This is not a creepypasta game or some online challenge. I need to know if someone else has been through this and found a way out. The room is getting quiet again. I can still hear myself typing, but the sound is dull now, like the keys are under cloth. The air feels heavy. The corner near my closet looks darker than it should. I know I should get up and turn on the light, but I am afraid to move because the footsteps behind me stopped a few minutes ago. And I think that means he is already here. Story 5. I need to get this off my chest because it's been eating at me for months, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it anymore. I keep replaying everything in my head at night, trying to figure out where I went wrong and what choice I should have made. The worst part is that no option feels clean. Every path I can see leads to someone getting hurt, and lately I've started to realize that might have been the point all along. I live in a pretty normal, middle-class neighborhood. The kind people picture when they imagine safe suburbs. The lawns are always trimmed. The sidewalks are clean. Most people wave even if they don't really know you. There's barely any crime, and when something small does happen, everyone talks about it for weeks because there isn't much else to talk about. It's quiet in a way that usually feels comforting. The neighbor on my left is an older woman, the type who still brings cookies over in a tin during the holidays and asks how your family is doing, like she actually means it. She's lived there forever, and she's never once caused a problem. If anything, she's the one who notices when someone's trash can tipped over in the wind and goes out to fix it without making a big deal. The neighbor on my right is the opposite. Not loud, not messy, not the kind of person who throws parties or lets his yard go to weeds. Just closed. In all the years I've lived here, I've never even learned his name. It's embarrassing to admit that. We've exchanged nods, maybe a stiff hello once or twice, but that's it. He keeps his head down and his life locked up behind his front door. People in neighborhoods like mine don't like empty spaces. If they don't have information, they fill it in with rumors. So I've heard bits and pieces over the years from other neighbors. Apparently he went through a divorce after being married for 30 years. Some people say his wife finally left him. Other people say he drove her away. Most of the rumors agree on one thing. There were 2 kids, and he lost custody because of his tendencies. No one ever explained what those tendencies were. Nobody said it directly. They just use that word the way people do when they want to imply something ugly, but don't want to be responsible for saying it out loud. The kind of word that makes you imagine the worst possibilities and then feel guilty for imagining them. During the day, none of it felt real. During the day, he was just another guy who lived nearby and didn't talk much. The problem always started after the sun went down. At night, when the neighborhood went quiet and all the normal sounds faded, TVs, cars, kids running around, one room in his house would light up. Always the same room. Upstairs, the bedroom, I assumed, because it faced the street and had the shape of a main bedroom window. It would glow like a single open eye in a sleeping face. And then the sound would start. The first time I heard it, I thought it was some kind of tool. Maybe he was fixing something. Maybe he had a hobby. But it didn't match anything I could name. It wasn't a drill or a saw, not exactly. It was a mechanical whirring, steady and harsh, like a motor under strain. And underneath that whir, there was something else. A crunching sound. Not a soft crunch like someone stepping on gravel. Not the quick crack of a branch. This was thick, layered, wet and hard at the same time, like something being crushed that shouldn't be crushed. The best way I can describe it is that it sounded bony, like pressure being applied until something gave way, then the pieces grinding together. The first few nights I told myself I was overreacting. People hear strange sounds at night. Your brain fills in gaps. Fear does that, but it kept happening. Not every night, but often enough that I started expecting it. Sometimes it would go on for minutes, sometimes longer. Sometimes it would stop and then start again like whoever was making it needed breaks. The sound made my stomach turn. I'd lie there in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to it through the quiet, feeling my skin tighten. Every time it started, my imagination went to the worst places. I'd picture him standing in that room doing something horrible. And once your mind goes there, it's hard to drag it back. I tried to share it with my wife. I didn't want to be alone with it. I wanted someone else to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. But she never heard it. That became its own kind of torture. The sound would start, and I would jolt upright, heart pounding, shaking her shoulder. I'd whisper urgently, telling her to listen. And she would blink and sit up and follow me to the window, half asleep and confused. By the time she got there, it would stop. Not fade, not taper down. Stop like someone had flipped a switch. We'd stand there looking at the neighbor's house. The upstairs light would still be on, shining out into the dark. Everything would look normal. Still, quiet, my wife would shrug and tell me maybe it was a raccoon in the trash, or pipes, or the wind. She'd say I was stressing myself out. I'd watch her go back to bed, already forgetting, and I'd stay by the window feeling stupid and paranoid. But it kept happening. Always when I was awake, alone. Always when I was the only one who could hear it. After a while, I started to dread going to sleep, because I knew I'd wake up again to that sound, and I knew I'd be alone with it. Eventually, my nights turned into routines that didn't feel normal anymore. I'd tuck my daughter into bed, kiss her forehead, tell her goodnight, and then I'd go to my own bedroom and turn off all the lights. I'd stand by the window in the dark, watching that glowing upstairs room across the property line. Waiting, sometimes I'd stand there for hours. Sometimes the sound would start and I'd feel that wave of nausea and adrenaline, and I'd just grip the window frame and listen, trying to figure out what it really was. Sometimes it didn't start at all, and I'd still stand there because I couldn't relax until morning came and the light in that room finally shut off. I started losing sleep, real sleep, the kind that actually restores you. I got through work on coffee and irritation. I'd snap at small things. I'd space out in conversations. My wife asked me more than once what was going on, and I'd give her some vague answer about stress. The truth was, I felt like I was being targeted. Not in an obvious way. He wasn't threatening me. He wasn't leaving notes on my door. But the timing, the way the sound stopped the moment I tried to prove it to someone else, made it feel personal. Like he knew I was listening. Like he wanted me to listen. After months of this, something in me broke. Curiosity can be a kind of pain. When you don't know what something is, your brain doesn't let it go. It scratches at you. It keeps pulling you back to the same question. And the longer it goes unanswered, the more it starts to feel like you need the answer just to breathe normally again. I know what you're thinking. I know you're going to judge what I did next. I know the safe, responsible thing would have been to call the police and tell them I suspected something, or to file a noise complaint, or to talk to other neighbors, or at least to knock on his door during the day and ask him if everything was okay. But you have to understand something. I didn't have evidence. I had a sound. I had a feeling. I had my imagination. And if you call the police on a neighbor because you heard a weird noise in the middle of the night, you better be ready for the possibility that you're wrong. You better be ready to be the paranoid guy on the block who wastes everyone's time. And on top of that, I couldn't shake the idea that involving anyone else would make it worse. If he really was doing something wrong, and he learned I'd called the cops, what would that mean for my family? For my daughter? The fear kept me quiet, and the curiosity kept me awake, and those two forces together pushed me into doing something I still can't believe I did. One morning, I called in sick to work. It wasn't dramatic. I just told my boss I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie, not really. I felt nauseous all the time. My chest felt tight. I was running on nerves. When I hung up the phone, I felt a strange calm settle over me, like I had already stepped off a ledge and now the fall was unavoidable. I told myself I was just going to look. That was it. I wasn't going to steal anything. I wasn't going to touch anything. I just wanted to see what was in that upstairs room. I wanted to put a name to the sound. My wife went about her normal morning routine. I kissed her goodbye like I always did, trying to act normal. I hugged my daughter, watched her grab her backpack, listened to her talk about her day like nothing in the world was wrong. When they left, the house got quiet, and my own silence felt heavy. I positioned myself at the dining room window where I could see the neighbor's driveway without being obvious from the street. Then I waited. Minutes dragged, then hours. I sat there like a person waiting for a storm to hit. My mind kept trying to talk me out of it. I'd think, this is insane. Go take a nap. You're not a detective. You're just a guy with a family. Then I'd imagine that crunching sound again, and the thought of never knowing what it was would make my hands clench. Finally, I saw him. He came out of his front door and walked to his car without looking around much. He moved like someone who didn't expect company. He got in, backed out, and drove away. I waited 5 more minutes, watching the street, forcing myself to stay still in case he turned around and came back. When he didn't, I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over the chair. My heart was pounding like I'd just run upstairs. I went outside, crossed my yard, and climbed the fence between our properties. I moved quickly but tried to keep my steps light. The grass was damp, and the air had that cool morning smell that usually feels clean. That day, it felt like the world was holding its breath. I reached his back door and hesitated. My hand hovered for a moment, and I had this sudden, clear thought. If I do this, I can't undo it. Even if I walk away right after, I will still have crossed the line. Then I tried the doorknob. It turned. The door opened. Unlocked, that should have been my second warning, but at the time I didn't read it that way. I thought he was careless. I thought I was lucky. The reality didn't hit me until later. As soon as I stepped inside, the smell hit me so hard it made my eyes water. It was rotten, not like old food in a fridge, not like mildew. Something deeper. Thick, sour decay that seemed to cling to the air. It wrapped around my head like a wet cloth. Instantly, I doubted myself. Instantly, I wanted to step back outside and gulp fresh air. I told myself to leave. I actually did. I shifted my weight toward the open door, ready to back out. Then my eyes found the staircase, and it felt like something in my chest tugged, like a hook catching under my ribs and pulling me forward. That sounds dramatic, but it's the only way I can describe it. I didn't walk toward the stairs like a person making a careful choice. I moved like someone being drawn. I started climbing. The staircase was old. The wood looked cracked and worn, like it had carried thousands of footsteps. Every time I put my foot down, it creaked in a long, complaining sound that made my skin prickle. My brain screamed at me to turn around. My instincts were practically yelling. This isn't your house. This isn't safe. But the need to know pushed me upward. The sleepless nights, the sound, the light, the way it always stopped at the perfect moment, it all shoved me forward like a hand between my shoulder blades. Halfway up, I paused and listened. The house was too quiet. No TV, no radio, no hum of conversation or everyday life. Just that smell and my own breathing and the soft creak of the stairs as the wood settled. At the top, I heard something that froze me in place. A groan, dampened, weak, like someone trying not to be heard. It came from a woman. For a second, my mind refused to accept it. Because once you hear a human sound like that in a quiet house, the situation changes. It's no longer a weird neighbor with a strange hobby. It's no longer a story you can laugh off later. It becomes something else, something real. The sound came again, and I followed it down the hallway, moving slowly, barely breathing. It led to the bedroom. The door was closed. I stood there staring at it. I don't know how long. Long enough for my hand to start tingling. Long enough for my mouth to go dry. The doorknob felt like it was staring back at me. Like it was daring me. Like the entire house was waiting to see if I would touch it. My hand lifted before I could talk myself out of it. It moved slowly, like I was afraid that if I went too fast, the world would snap, and I'd wake up in my own bed. I was inches from the knob when the woman spoke again, clearer this time, and what she said made my stomach drop. Please, no, don't do this. You're not a monster. You can take the kids back. Just let me free with my leg. You've already taken everything else. My eyes widened. My brain tried to make sense of the words. The kids. Take them back. Let me free with my leg. I felt a sick realization start to form, like a shape coming into focus. The divorce rumors, the lost custody, the tendencies, the upstairs room, the smell. Was she the ex-wife? And if she was, what did free with my leg mean? I didn't even get the chance to touch the knob. My phone rang. The sudden sound was so sharp in the quiet hallway that I jumped backward and sucked in air with an audible gasp. It was loud. Too loud. And the moment it happened, everything on the other side of the door changed. The woman stopped pleading with her husband and started pleading with me. She must have realized immediately that I wasn't him. Her voice rose into panic, fast and desperate. She begged me to let her out. She told me that if I walked away, I was complicit. That if I left her there, I was responsible for what happened next. I fumbled the phone with shaking fingers. My screen lit up. No caller ID. My heart went cold because some part of me already knew. I don't know how, but I knew. My thumb hovered for a fraction of a second. Then I accepted the call and raised it to my ear. A low voice spoke, gruff and calm in a way that didn't match the moment. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't angry. It sounded like someone telling you the weather. I know where you are. I know what you've seen. You think you broke in? I let you in. I played you like a fiddle. My mouth opened, but at first nothing came out. My throat felt tight. Finally, I managed to whisper, I'm calling the police. The voice didn't change. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I'm sitting in the parking lot outside your daughter's school. For her sake, you should turn around and leave. My mind tried to reject it, tried to label it a bluff. I told myself nobody could be that bold. Nobody would say that over the phone. I forced out, you're bluffing. You can't escape your actions. He responded by listing addresses. 6602 Workshire Lane. 1241 Forest Road, I knew those numbers. I knew them the way you know your own birthday. One was my home. The other was my wife's work. My stomach twisted. My vision felt strange, like the hallway tilted. Then he kept going, like he was reading from a schedule. Your wife gets off work at 3 and picks your daughter up at 3:30. Your daughter has ballet lessons from 5 to 6 p.m., and you pick her up 5 minutes late every single time. I've been watching you. You are not in control. If you know what's best for you, for your family, you're going to back away from the door, leave the house, and never speak of this to anyone. Understand? The woman was still begging on the other side of the door. Her voice sounded broken now, like she'd been screaming for a long time before I ever got there. She was calling me names, calling me a coward, calling me her only chance. I stood between the door and the phone like the worst kind of crossroads. I wanted to be brave. I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to rip the door open and drag her out and run and call the police and watch him get arrested and have the whole nightmare end. But then my brain threw images at me that I couldn't push away. My daughter walking out of school, my wife stepping into the parking lot at work, a man sitting in a car, watching, waiting, a calm voice promising consequences. And the horrible truth was that I believed him, not because he had proof, not because I saw him, because he sounded like someone who already knew he had won. I didn't get to answer. The line cut off. I stood there with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead silence from the call, while the woman sobbed and pleaded behind the door. My hands were shaking so badly the phone almost slipped. I wish I could tell you I made a clever plan in that moment. I wish I could tell you I called for help anyway, or that I grabbed something heavy and forced the door open, or that I did literally anything that didn't feel like surrender. But I didn't. I turned away from the door. I walked back down the stairs slowly, like my body was made of concrete. Each step creaked under my weight, loud and accusing. The smell seemed to follow me down, thick in the air. I moved through the house and out the back door and shut it gently, the way you shut a door when you don't want to wake someone. Outside, the air was cold and clean, and I took a huge breath like I'd been underwater. My legs felt weak. My heart was still hammering. I crossed back into my yard and went to my own front door. I didn't look back once. I couldn't. I was afraid that if I turned around, I'd see him standing in the upstairs window watching me, smiling, the way someone smiles when they've trained an animal to obey. It has been 3 weeks since that day. The sound still happens at night. The same upstairs room still lights up. And that mechanical whirring still starts, followed by that thick crunching noise that makes my teeth ache just to hear it. If anything, it sounds more confident now, like it doesn't even care whether I'm listening. Sometimes I still shake my wife awake, out of habit. hoping this time she'll hear it too. She never does. Either it stops, or maybe it was never meant for her. Maybe it was always meant for me, a private show meant to keep me in my place. I feel trapped. I feel like I'm living next door to something I'm not allowed to name. I think about the woman behind that door. I think about her voice cracking as she begged. I think about the words she said about her leg, about him taking everything else. I think about how long she might have been up there, and how many nights I stood by my window listening to that crushing sound while she was only a few yards away, suffering. I don't know if she's still alive. And that makes me feel sick, because I can't pretend ignorance anymore. I can't tell myself it's none of my business. I walked into that house. I heard her. I stood outside the door and did nothing. But then I look at my wife sleeping beside me. I look at my daughter's face when she curls into my arms on the couch and tells me about school. I think about a man who knows our schedules, our addresses, our routines, a man who can sit in a parking lot and wait. And the truth is, I don't know how to fight someone like that without risking my family. So I'm sitting here on my bed, typing this with my wife next to me and my daughter in my arms, and I'm trying to convince myself that protecting them is the right choice, even if it means living with what I heard, even if it means living with what I didn't do, no matter the cost. Story 6. I promised Bobby I would never tell anyone what happened, not as long as we were both alive. I kept that promise for almost 20 years. I kept it through panic attacks, through sleepless nights, through moving apartments, just because the bathroom mirror felt like it was staring at me. But Bobby is basically dead now. And I can't hold this in anymore, because she's going to come for me next. Bobby and I grew up together in the kind of neighborhood where parents left their doors unlocked and kids ran between houses like they were all one big family. Our moms were best friends, so they bought houses right next to each other. When they both got pregnant around the same time, it turned into a joke that we'd probably be born on the same day too. And somehow, because of timing and doctors and luck, we were. July 18th. From the start, we were a matched set. We learned to ride bikes together, got our first scrapes together, got grounded together. We had the kind of friendship where you could walk into the other person's house and grab food from the kitchen without asking. By middle school, we were so in sync that we'd sometimes finish each other's sentences. It sounds creepy when I write it out, but it didn't feel creepy back then. It felt normal. It felt like having a built-in teammate against the rest of the world. That all changed in the summer of 1998. For our 13th birthday, Bobby's mom made this massive 10-layer chocolate cake, the kind that looks like it belongs in a bakery window. Bobby wasn't popular at school, not in the way the loud kids were. He was quiet and anxious and got embarrassed easily. But he had me, and I always made sure our birthday parties had people there. We managed, somehow, to convince our parents to let us have a sleepover at Bobby's house after the party, which felt like winning the lottery at 13. I remember that day too clearly. I remember what people wore, which is strange because I'm not the kind of person who notices outfits. I can't tell you what my girlfriend wore yesterday, but I can tell you what shoes one kid had on at our birthday party in 1998. I've heard people say trauma does that right before and right after something terrible, the brain starts recording everything like it's trying to protect you later by giving you evidence. Like during a car crash, you remember the song on the radio, and the smell of the air freshener, and the exact color of the sky. Watching someone die in front of you does the same thing. It plants details in you that never rot. Tick, double tick. I can't tell you this story without telling you about the mirror. I'm not superstitious. I've never been into ghosts or crystals or rituals, but even as a kid, I didn't like mirrors. I didn't like bathrooms with big mirrors. I didn't like standing too close to one at night. I'd seen enough horror movies by 13 to know the basics. Don't chant names into a mirror. Don't test it. Don't treat it like a joke. Everyone knows Bloody Mary. Maybe that's why mirrors scare people so easily. They aren't some rare haunted object in a creepy mansion. They're already in your home. Sometimes in every room. You can't avoid them forever. And there's a reason mirrors show up in old stories. Some cultures believed mirrors were doorways, not a metaphor, a real threshold, a place where the living and the dead brushed up against each other. Some people covered mirrors after a death so the spirit wouldn't get trapped. Some used them in rituals, like you could ask questions and something would answer back if you did it right. Bobby's bathroom had a big mirror above the sink, bigger than any mirror I had at home. It had an ornate oak frame, dark and heavy, like it belonged in an old house, not a normal suburban one. The glass itself looked unusually dark, like it had a deep black backing instead of silver. It reflected light, but the reflection never looked bright. It always looked like it was coming from a room with the lights turned down. Bobby used to tell me it had been in his family for generations. His dad was Mexican-American and had decorated parts of the house with things his own father brought from Mexico City. Carvings, textiles, religious items, little pieces of another life. The mirror was part of that collection. According to Bobby, his grandfather had kept it safe and then passed it down like it mattered. I hated that mirror. I avoided that bathroom when I could. If I had to use it, I did it fast. I refused to wash my hands while looking up. I wouldn't meet my own eyes in it. It gave me this crawling feeling in my chest, like it didn't reflect me the way a mirror should. Like it remembered faces. That night started innocent. It started the way sleepovers always did, with kids trying to act older than they were. The girls decided they'd sleep in the living room, and Bobby and I would sleep in his bedroom. Only 4 of us ended up staying the night. Me, Bobby, Jessica, and Angie. Jessica was tough and sarcastic, the kind of girl who could make a teacher laugh and then destroy you with one sentence. Angie was younger than us by a year or 2 and desperate to be taken seriously. She always dressed like she was going somewhere important. She wore too much lip gloss and loved attention like it was oxygen. And Angie loved mirrors. She was always checking herself in anything reflective. Bathroom mirrors, hallway mirrors, even the dark TV screen if it was turned off. She'd tilt her head, suck in her cheeks, turn sideways, adjust her hair, like she was practicing being someone. At some point that night, Angie walked out of Bobby's bathroom again, doing that thing where she blinked slowly and tried to look glamorous even in a kid's pajama shirt. "Guys," she said, pouting her lips, "does this shade make my lips look too puffy?" Jessica rolled her eyes so hard it looked like it hurt. "If you spend half as much time on your personality as you do your makeup, you'd be a halfway interesting person, eh?" Angie smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "Wow. Quick one, Jess. I guess not all of us are blessed with such a busy mouth to keep everyone entertained, right, boys?" Bobby turned red instantly and stared at the floor. Angie knew he had a crush on Jessica. Everyone knew. Bobby's feelings were always written on his face like a sign. "Okay," I said, trying to calm it down. "Claws away. Now let's play something else. I'm bored." Bobby cleared his throat. "What about 7 minutes in heaven?" "Bobby," I said, "there's only 4 of us." He went red again and stared at the door like it might rescue him. Angie leaned forward, excited by the awkwardness. "What about the postman's knock?" Jessica frowned. "What the hell is that, Angie? Your mom's stripper name?" Angie huffed. "No. It's a game where we deliver a message to someone in another room, like we're sending mail. We pick a postmaster, and they go into another room. Then we knock 3 times and whisper the message through the door. The postmaster writes down what they think they heard and slides it under the door. If they get it right, they win a kiss. If they get it wrong, they have to stay in the post office in the dark, look at themselves in the mirror, and repeat the correct message 3 times. The moment Angie said mirror, I felt my stomach tighten. Jessica, of course, didn't care. Fine, she said. But if this is just you trying to get your hands on Benjamin, that's gross. Angie's eyes flicked to me. Relax. It's a game. We decided Jessica would be the first postmaster. She grabbed a pen and a small pad of paper from Bobby's desk and went into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. A strip of light glowed under the door. Angie turned to us with a determined look like she was planning a prank. Let's make it hard. She pointed at Bobby. Okay, Bobby. You have to whisper, tickle, tickle. I like to tickle. I'd like to tickle Benny's pickle. Bobby's face went bright red. I can't say that. Yes, you can, Angie said and shoved his shoulder. Don't be a baby. Whisper it so she has to lean in. Bobby looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor, but he stepped up to the bathroom door. He knocked 3 times. On the other side, we heard Jessica move closer. Bobby leaned toward the crack by the door frame and whispered so softly I barely caught it. Tickle, tickle, I like to tickle. I'd like to tickle Benny's pickle. Angie covered her mouth to keep from laughing out loud. We heard pencil scratching. Then a pause. Then a small slip of paper slid under the door. Angie grabbed it, unfolded it slowly, and squinted. What the? You cheated? Jessica's voice came through the door, slightly muffled, smug. I most certainly did not. Nobody likes a sore loser. Angie frowned, then forced a smile. Fine. Get out here. Next round. Jessica came out grinning like she'd won something huge. She held up the pad like proof. Claim your prize, she said to Angie. I guess it's just Bobby, though, so pucker up. Jessica's expression faltered for a second, but she recovered fast. She leaned over and gave Bobby a quick peck on the cheek, like it was nothing. Bobby went red enough to match a fire truck and sat down hard on the bed, staring at his hands. We drew straws for the next postmaster. Angie got the shortest one. She smiled like a cartoon villain. I'm not going easy on her after that, she said, and slipped back into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. The light under the door shone again. Bobby shifted uncomfortably. No offense, Angie. None taken, Angie called through the door. Jessica crossed her arms. I'll handle the message, she said quietly, and walked up to the bathroom door. I want to deliver this one myself. I didn't like the way she said it. Aren't you worried she'll get it right and you'll have to kiss her? I asked, trying to keep it playful. Jessica didn't smile. Oh, she won't get it right. I'm sure of it. She knocked 3 times, leaned in close to the doorframe, and whispered something so low and so fast that I didn't catch a word. Then she stepped back and walked toward us like nothing happened. There was silence on the other side of the door. Too much silence. A piece of paper slid under the door slowly, like someone was pushing it without using their fingers. I was closest. I picked it up before Jessica could. It was folded once. My hands felt oddly cold as I opened it. Why would you say that to me? That's all it said. I looked up at Jessica, expecting confusion, but her face was blank. Her earlier grin was gone. Her eyes looked darker somehow, like something had moved behind them. What did you tell her? I asked. Jessica, what the hell did you say? Nothing she shouldn't already know, Jessica said. She said my name in a way that didn't sound friendly. Benjamin, then the light under the bathroom door went out. The hallway and bedroom lights were still on, so it wasn't a power outage. It was just the bathroom, like someone had reached up and flipped the switch off. Angie didn't come out. Jessica shifted her weight like she was suddenly unsure. "Hey," she called toward the door, voice tighter now. "Angie, are you okay in there?" I tried the door handle. Locked from the inside. I leaned closer to the gap between the door and the frame, listening. At first, all I heard was my own blood in my ears, my pulse thudding like footsteps. I pressed my ear flat to the wood, putting my weight against it. I heard whispering. Angie was talking, but it didn't sound like normal talking. It sounded like someone repeating something, like practice, like a line being memorized. Then came a sound I still hear in my sleep. 3 knocks, but not from the door, from the mirror, from the other side of the mirror. After the knocks, there was a small giggle, a child's giggle. Then the sound of something bumping against the counter, like arms or knees hitting the sink and faucet, something moving fast in a tight space. Then, silence. Then a wet, heavy thud, like something dropped onto the tile floor. I held my breath without realizing it. Behind me, Bobby and Jessica were silent. I could feel them standing close. Then, I heard something even worse, something so close I couldn't understand it at first. A soft sound matched with a sensation, like air brushing the skin in a steady rhythm. Breathing, Angie was breathing right against the wood where my ear was pressed. I jerked back so fast I nearly fell into Bobby and Jessica. My whole body went cold. Then Angie started whispering through the crack in the door, right where the frame didn't seal perfectly. "I've got someone I want you to meet, Benny," she whispered. "She says she'll tickle your pickle and promises she won't bite." The voice wasn't Angie's. It used Angie's words, the same teasing tone, but the sound was wrong. It was too light, too close, too pleased, like a stranger pretending to be her with only a rough idea of how she talked. "There's something not right," I said, my voice shaking. "We need to wake your parents, Bobby." Bobby shook his head hard. "No, no way. They'll freak out that we're all in here together. She's just messing with us because she couldn't say the message." That's when the bedroom lights went out. Jessica let out a scream, but Bobby clapped his hand over her mouth before it could get too loud. The room went thick and black, the kind of dark that makes you feel trapped even if you're standing still. We sat on the edge of the bed, frozen. "Listening, Ang?" Bobby called, trying to sound brave and failing. "You're scaring us. Can you just come out so we can go to bed?" No answer. Bobby reached under his bed and pulled out a flashlight like he'd been preparing for this his whole life. He clicked it on, and the beam cut across the room, shaking in his hand. It landed on the brass handle of the bathroom door. The handle was turning, slowly, carefully, like someone wanted us to watch it happen. Jessica grabbed my arm. Bobby was trembling so hard the flashlight beam bounced like a heartbeat. The doorknob turned until it clicked. The door began to open. At first, we saw nothing but the bathroom cabinet and tile floor. Then, Bobby lifted the beam higher, and it hit the mirror for a second. The reflection flashed bright, and then seemed to swallow the light, bending it strangely. It felt like the beam didn't bounce back the way it should, like the mirror was drinking it. A shadow stepped into the line of light. The flashlight flickered and went dead. Jessica jumped up, backing toward the bedroom door to the hallway. She tried the knob. Locked. She started to panic and slam her fist against it, shouting for help. On the other side, we heard feet running, a crash, then pounding back at her, like someone was trying to get to us. Bobby smacked the flashlight against his palm, whispering frantic prayers to a God I didn't think he even believed in. Jessica's pounding stopped, and for a moment I thought she'd passed out. Then I realized she'd gone quiet, because she was listening, too. From the bathroom came that wet sound again, something hitting the floor. Then, breaking glass. A sharp, violent crash. In the hallway, Bobby's dad was shouting now, his voice loud and furious, slamming his shoulder into the door. The whole wall seemed to shake with every hit. Bobby smacked the flashlight one more time. The light came back, and the room wasn't the room anymore. The first thing I noticed, stupidly, was the wallpaper. Bobby's mom had put it up when he was little. Little ducks in raincoats on a soft blue background, because Bobby used to love ducks. He never let her change it. It was a bright, childish pattern that made his bedroom look safer than it really was. In the flashlight beam, the ducks looked wrong. At first, I thought the wallpaper had changed color. Then I realized it hadn't changed at all. It was covered in blood. It was on the walls, in streaks and spatters and smears like someone had painted with it. It was on the floor. It was on the bedspread. It was in dots across the ceiling where the beam shook. Jessica was still standing by the bedroom door, but she wasn't pounding anymore. Her body was stiff, like she was trying to hold herself upright through willpower alone. Her mouth opened like she was going to speak, and then she made a sound that didn't fully form, like her throat couldn't decide between breathing and screaming. The beam moved, and I saw the bathroom. I won't describe everything. I can't. Even now, my stomach turns and my hands get sweaty just thinking about it. But I will tell you the parts that matter, the parts that make the rest of it unavoidable. Jessica was in the bathroom, or what was left of her was. She was face down on the tile, twisted at an angle that didn't look human. There was broken glass everywhere, and so much blood that the floor looked black in the flashlight. I remember seeing pieces of glass stuck to her, and I remember the sound of something dripping. Not water, not from the faucet. Drip, drip in the mirror above the sink was perfect. Clean, unbroken, except for one bloody handprint near the sink, smeared like someone had braced themselves there, and a small footprint on the wall, just above the vanity, like someone had stepped up to climb. Bobby's dad finally broke through the hallway door. The lock cracked, wood splintered, and suddenly the room filled with shouting and light and chaos. Bobby's mom screamed. Someone grabbed me by the shoulders and pulled me back. Someone else tried to cover Bobby's eyes, even though he was already staring like his mind had snapped into pieces. The police came. An ambulance came. Neighbors stood outside in pajamas. Adults spoke in calm voices that didn't match the scene. For a while, I think I blocked parts of it out. The brain does that too. It locks away the worst moments, because you can't carry them, and still go to school the next week. But Bobby didn't block it out. Bobby held the flashlight. Bobby saw what I didn't see. A few days later, after the police had been through the house and everyone had stopped calling it a tragedy and started calling it an incident, Bobby told me what he remembered. He said he saw Angie climb up by the mirror. He said she put her foot against the wall and her hand by the sink, like she was climbing onto the counter. He said she turned to smile at him. She was covered in blood when she smiled. Then she stepped into the mirror, not through it like it was a window, into it like it was water. Like the glass wasn't hard at all, like it opened for her because it wanted her. And then she was gone, swallowed behind her own reflection. The police decided it was an accident. They said Jessica slipped in water and fell through the glass shower door, and the glass caused her injuries. Official paperwork described it in clean language that didn't match reality. They explained away the number of wounds as multiple lacerations. They said over and over that panic can make people misinterpret what they see. They didn't explain why there were more than 80 stab wounds on her body. They didn't explain why bits of darker glass were found inside of her that didn't match the shower. They didn't explain the handprint or the footprint. The mirror was never listed as broken, because it wasn't. Angie disappeared. There were searches. There were phone calls. There were posters. The adults settled on the idea that Angie had freaked out and run away through Bobby's bedroom window after Jessica's accident, and then something happened to her out in the night. But no one ever found her. Her missing person poster still hangs in the local police department on a board for lost children, faded at the edges, like time itself is trying to forget her. Bobby's family moved a couple months after that. It wasn't dramatic, just quiet. A for sale sign, a moving truck. Bobby avoiding eye contact with me at school until he stopped showing up at all. We drifted apart the way kids do when adults make decisions for them. But before he left, on the last day when his parents were packing the car, Bobby pulled me aside and made me promise something. Never tell what really happened, he said. His voice sounded older than 13, not as long as we're both alive. I promised. I remember seeing them box up the old mirror. It was wrapped like something fragile, thick blankets and tape. I assumed it would go on the moving truck with everything else. It didn't. They dragged it out to the curb like trash, like they didn't want it in the house for one more second. They left it standing beside the road with the bulky oak frame facing the street. The next day, it was gone. Someone must have taken it. Someone saw a nice old mirror with a carved frame and thought it was a lucky find. Someone brought it home and hung it up, proud of themselves. I've wondered for years if they ever heard the knocking. Because I still do. It's been almost 20 years, and I still can't look into a mirror for more than a second. In every place I've lived, I've covered bathroom mirrors with towels or sheets. I've gotten good at shaving without looking. I brush my teeth staring at the faucet. In hotels, I bring tape in my bag just in case. If I'm out in public and catch my reflection in a store window, my body reacts before my brain does. My heart jumps. My skin tightens. I tell people it's just a weird anxiety thing. I joke about horror movies ruining me as a kid. Most people laugh and let it go. But late at night, when everything gets quiet and the house settles, I sometimes hear 3 knocks. Not from the door, not from the wall, from the mirror, from the other side of the mirror behind the sheet I've hung over it like a bandage. For years it happened rarely, maybe once every few months, always when I was half asleep, and could almost convince myself it was a dream. I'd lie there holding my breath, staring at the dark shape of the covered mirror, waiting for it to happen again. And it never did, not the same night. Not until recently. 2 nights ago, I heard the knocks again. 3 clean knocks, evenly spaced. Then, nothing. Last night, it happened again. Tonight is the 3rd night, and I haven't answered the postman's knock. That's the thing people don't understand about fear. It changes. At first, it's wild panic. Later, it becomes routine dread. You start to develop rules for your fear, the way you develop rules for anything that can hurt you. You start to believe that if you do everything right, you can keep living. After I heard what happened to Bobby, I started keeping my bathroom door closed and locked at night. I don't care if I live alone. I don't care if it's irrational. I do it anyway. Like a kid checking under the bed. I'm lying in bed now with my laptop open because I'm afraid to fall asleep. I'm afraid if I sleep, I won't hear what I need to hear until it's too late. It's been silent for hours. A kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing. My ears keep straining for any sound, like my body is listening even when my mind wants to stop. Then, it happened. Knock, knock, knock. My whole body went tight. My throat went dry. I swear I heard that wet thud again somewhere behind the bathroom door, like something heavy hit tile and didn't bounce. My fingers are stiff as I type this. Something moved in the dark, close to the floor. A piece of paper slid under the bathroom door. I stared at it like it was a snake. I tried turning on the lights, but they aren't working. Not the lamp, not the overhead, nothing. It's like the power in the room has been cut, except my laptop is still running and my phone still has charge. I grabbed my flashlight from the nightstand and aimed it at the bathroom door, keeping the beam fixed there like it could protect me. Then I did the stupidest thing possible. I got out of bed. I moved slowly, as quiet as I could, and crept across the room. The paper looked thin and bright against the dark floor. My flashlight flickered once, as if it didn't want to stay on. I reached down, snatched the slip of paper, and practically ran back to bed. Now I'm under the covers like a child, holding the paper with shaking hands, trying to use my laptop screen for light, because the flashlight keeps cutting out. The room smells like sweat and warm electronics. My heart is slamming so hard I can feel it in my teeth. I unfolded the paper. I shouldn't have. The words on it were simple, written in neat handwriting that reminded me of Jessica's, but cleaner somehow, like someone practicing how to be her. Don't you want to know what Jessica said? As soon as I read it, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The air beside my face felt warmer, like someone was close enough to share my breath. I heard it, too, right near my ear. A soft inhale, a slow exhale, the sound of someone enjoying how scared I am. The bed shifted, not like the building settling, not like a spring creaking, like someone sat down carefully on the mattress beside me, close enough that the dip pulled at my body through the blankets. I can't make myself turn my head. I can't make myself look. All I can do is type, because typing makes me feel like I'm still on my side of things, still in my own world, still real. The knocking stopped. The room is quiet again, except for that breathing near my ear, and I can feel her smile even though I can't see it.